a publisher, and one day my daughter Christina asked me to write a novel with her. Well, that day was long ago, and that little girl is now an adult. But our novels live on. The Truth Seekers Mystery Series highlights a homeschool family, the Murphy teens, in an action-adventure novel that is sure to entertain as well as teach creation truths. To get your copy, visit our website at truthseekersmysteryseries.com.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions, from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hi and welcome. This is Felice Gerwitz, and this is an episode of Vintage Homeschool Moms. It's another Just for Kids episode, so get your kids together. I'm going to be talking to them. This is episode 424, and you can find the show notes for today, Teaching Kids Cause and Effect, on vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. All right, so what is cause and effect, and how do we teach our children to understand that everything they do has a ripple effect on the world? Well, we are going to explore this meaning of cause and effect, and understanding, too, that this is the foundation we need for our lives. Before we get started, I wanted you to know about my website, mediaangels.com. Be sure to sign up for our monthly planners. We have new character planners every month, and this month, as I'm recording this, our topic is on self-control, and this is a planner that has fun activities. They change all the time each month, and they're open-ended, so you can add things to the planner, but at the end of each month, they go to the Media Angels website for sale, but you can get them for free if you're part of our email list. All right, I'm ready to begin now. So kids, we are going to talk about cause and effect, and I'm going to ask you a question. Do you know what a consequence is? You probably do. A consequence is something that happens when we do something, and the consequence can be good, but it also can be bad. One of the things we don't realize is that when we do something, it affects other people. So the first question I want to ask is, if you drop a pebble in water, like a pond, what happens? You probably said you see ripples, or the water moves, or something like that. Well, this is called the ripple effect. By dropping a stone, that causes the water to ripple, but something else. And while we see it with our own eyes, do we understand the reason it happens? It happens because of you and your part. You took the time and the energy to drop a pebble or a stone or throw a stone or something else into the water. The same thing happens with our actions. Did you know this is actually a scientific law? Issac Newton had a ton of theories, and one of them was about laws and motion. And this is kind of called a science principle, which is physics. Well, there's actually a third scientific law of motion, and it states that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So that explains scientifically why this happens. Another question. What happens if you push someone on a swing? You push them backwards, right? But they come forward, and it just keeps going, and it's the momentum, right? It's about law and motion. So this is the same kind of thing. With the amount of force you pushed, that person comes forward. with the same amount of force, and then it slows down over time. And so we now have the next part that is difficult. We understand the scientific part, but the difficult part is controlling our own actions. In the last podcast, we talked about the golden rule and how this is something that we should do. We should treat others the way we want to be treated. And in this way, we are setting an example for others. We can see a good effect of, for when a leader does something right, especially if they're right and trustworthy, but we can also see this as a positive effect. An effect happens because of what we are doing. It also follows kind of a rule. What will happen if? Have you ever heard those questions? What will happen if you do this or that? What will happen if I punch my brother? What will happen if I trip my sister? What will happen if I spill a glass of water? What will happen if I eat an entire bag of chocolate? The effect comes directly, once again, like the pebble, from our answers. An amazing thing happens if we're aware of what we do. Through an entirely God-given gift, and that is free will, this causes things not only today, but to affect our future. Just think if you decide to eat an entire bag of chocolate every day, what would the effects be on your future? That's right, you might be sick of chocolate, but you also can gain a ton of weight. And so we have consequences to our action. How do these consequences happen? By our direct actions. We physically put the chocolate in our mouth, right? We made that decision. That was a free will decision. Some things are very easy to figure out. My stomach's going to hurt if I eat a whole bag of chocolate. And others, not so much. They would be called gray areas. A gray area is harder to think about. It can be one of those things that there's not a right or wrong answer to. And as a kid, you may hate that. You just want a yes or no. But we can brainstorm some of these things with our families, and here are a few that you can discuss with your parents at home. If I spend all of my free time playing games, I will. So you can fill that in with whatever you want to. But just think about this. If you spend all of your free time playing games, what is the effect going to be? You're probably going to be sick of the games. You're going to be wasting time. I don't know what you think it will be, but you'll have to fill that in yourself. The second is, if I fix my bed every morning, the effect will be, once again, think about this. What will the effect be? The third is, treating others as I want to be treated will lead to, once again, you're making a decision. What is that going to lead to? What is the effect of that decision? Here's another one. If I pitch a fit and I am loud and rude, I will. What do you think is going to happen? Here's a little helpful hint for you here. No, you're not going to always get your own way. Maybe it works once or twice, but I guarantee you at some point, somebody's going to say no. All right, and number 5, I can lead by example doing what is right or just, or I can lead by example doing what is always right for myself. So these would be 2 separate ones, but what will the cause of the effect be? What are some of your answers? Can you imagine a world where we think through our actions first before we do them? What do you think the outcome would be of this way of thinking? Wow, we actually think first before we do something. In many ways, we as adults do this, not because we're so brilliant, but because we've lived a little bit longer and have had the experience. We've actually learned from our mistakes and we've decided we don't want to do that again. Long ago, I taught school, and I remember a 6th grader telling me that I didn't get him. He said, "There is no way you can ever understand me." And I looked at him and I said, "That's right. I was never a 6th grader. I skipped right over 6th grade. I went from 11 to 23. That's how old I was at the time. Do you think that's right? I asked him. And he said, no. So I said, you know what? I was in 6th grade, and our teacher made us sit with our hands folded on our desks while she spoke. Nothing could be on our desks, no paper, no pencils, and definitely no devices that weren't even invented back then. After she finished, we took our lessons and worked on them, copied from the board, and never spoke up unless spoken to. And if we did, we were punished severely. I knew at this time, as a 6th grader, that I didn't like school, and I would work really hard to be done with school. And guess what? Here I am years later, a teacher. Obviously, that plan didn't work out too well. Of course, the kid laughed. But the point here is that I am still writing curriculum and teaching kids. Why? Because I loved it. So when I was a 6th grader, I had different ideas of what I have today. And we can make plans as a kid. You should. What do you want to do when you grow up? Think about that. But our plans might change. And one thing you can always do as a kid is realize that whatever you do has an effect on others. You may not get away with bad behavior this time, but you might another time. And kids are gamblers. Kids like to try it again. And if you have gotten away with doing something bad, you might try it again. But realize that at some point, it's going to catch up to you. When we see people who do really bad things and have no self-control, we kind of say, gosh, how does that person keep making bad decisions, one on top of another? Well, they may not have suffered enough consequences. What is a consequence? It's the punishment that happens when we do something wrong. So look at your life and take charge. You can be a leader. You can start today. Look at the decisions you make and choose wisely. It can be the difference between life that is filled with joy and happiness, as much as possible on this side of heaven, or one that is filled with mistakes that we constantly have to apologize for. I want to take a quick little turn and talk about the idea of accidents. Okay, now I don't mean an accident with something that's going to hurt you. I mean it saying that when you mess up, it was an accident. Oh, Mom, I didn't mean to do that. That was an accident. Is it just an accident? Was it truly an accident? Are you sure you didn't purposely do whatever it was that you did? You know, sometimes we just say it's an accident when it really wasn't an accident. We actually took our foot and tripped our sibling, or we actually had our shoulder run into somebody accidentally on purpose. If you keep saying things are an accident, this leads you to lie to yourself. You know deep down in your heart if it really was an accident or if it was done on purpose. And you can continue to lie to yourself, and guess what? You will soon believe your lies, and you are heading down the wrong path. A path that is wide, and at some point in time is going to lead to judgment. So what's it going to be? One thing I love about you guys, that I love about kids, that is the reason I'm doing an entire kids series, is that you get it. When I look at kids, I see that they're smart and they're inventive and they understand and they see the big picture. And I think we as parents and adults don't often give kids credit with understanding. You know what's right. You know what is just. You know what self-control is. You know what cause and effect is. You know what consequences are. And you can make a difference in your world for the better. So the question is, are you going to think before you act? Are you going to realize that for every action, there is an equal reaction? Remember Newton's third law of motion? This may be one of the most important decisions you ever make. Am I going to think before I act? Yes or no? Well, thanks so much for joining me today as we talked about cause and effect. We have some more podcasts planned just for kids series, and you can find the show notes for today's episode at episode 424, Teaching Kids Cause and Effect. Take care until next time. I will talk to you soon, and you can find those show notes at Vintage Homeschool Moms. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and theVintageHomeschoolMoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.